everyone, what's up? Welcome to episode 3 of Kinda Different, a podcast where we talk about innovation in dental care, we connect with our amazing guests, and we talk about how we can make dental care more human. Super excited to have David Nidetz with us today, who is just one of the smartest people I know, as well as just being a wonderfully genuine human. I'll let him introduce himself here in just a second. But yeah, for those of you who might be new to listening, we love to chat with industry leaders, clinicians, and patients, and just kind of get a sense of, hey, where is dental going when it comes to innovation? How can we adopt really human-centered strategies to move the profession forward, in addition to those, hey, here's what's happening in technology or innovation. So if you're new to listening, hopefully that sounds interesting to you. I think you're going to learn a lot from David today, and I'm really pumped to have him on the show. David, thank you for joining us. I would love for you to maybe just start with a quick introduction for our listeners to let them know, hey, here's who I am, here's where I work, etc. And then we'll jump into some questions for you.
Great. No, thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about dental. My name is David Nidetz. I am a senior director at Alvarez Marsal in their healthcare industry group. I've been with A&M for about 4 years now, but been in healthcare consulting now for about 15. I started really in the medical side on operations and revenue cycle, and now really do a lot of transaction work. And about 3.5 years ago, really got into the dental side of things, dental and ortho, and have now had countless dental clients who I've helped both from an operations and revenue cycle and patient experience perspective.
Perfect. Well, I think one of the things that's most interesting about your kind of consulting experience, right, is you get to see all these different groups, right? And you get to see pain points, and you get to see, hey, here's what they're doing well. So I just imagine that lends itself to a really broad perspective of where the industry is going, and what various groups are struggling with, where they're doing well, et cetera. So I'm excited to really dive into that. So we have innovation. We have some questions about you, and we have making dental care more human. Is there a specific spot that you want to start in a true choose your own adventure format? What would you like
Let's
to
start with innovation and go from there.
Okay, cool. So you just talked about like revenue cycle management, you talked about patient experience, you talked about a number of the different spaces where you've been helping your clients. What's one area of the dental ecosystem that you think could benefit the most from change based on what you've seen?
Yeah, we talk about this so much with a lot of our clients, both big and small. And I think getting patients in the door as pain-free as possible, not pain-free in the mouth, but pain-free in experience, if you will. I think that the overall dental industry as a whole has been playing catch up for the last 5-10 years to other spaces within medical, and really figuring out ways to better proactively engage with patients, make it easy to book an appointment, make it easy to handle all of your insurance or any of your financial clearance that takes place, and make sure that you enter the clinic on time and you're seen on time, and that you leave on time. I think one of the biggest detractors that we see is that whole waiting in the waiting room for 30 minutes, waiting in the chair for another 20 minutes, and maybe you see a doctor for 5, and you end up being late for the rest of your stuff for the day, and you didn't really get a whole lot of time with the dentist. And so for us, I think we like to focus on how do we better engage with our patients to make it easy to schedule an appointment, make it easy to handle everything before you get there, and even know if the doctor is running late to show up a little bit later, or they're running early and you maybe should be able to show up a little bit earlier. That type of real-time engagement, I think, is going to be really helpful to be a productive and patient-friendly dental experience.
Totally. And it feels like, I talk a lot about how there's a lot of, companies that are, I think, addressing that like kind of convenience aspect, but to me, that's just truly like hey, like it's happening in every other aspect of a patient's life. If we can't be sensitive to that, we're going to be left behind in terms of how we think about that. So at least to me, that's how I see it. I don't know what your perspective on that might be.
No, I think that's exactly right. We're seeing a lot of interesting technology being used out there now to do that, whether it's real-time notifications of how that doc is running for the day, or even using geofencing to know when the patient shows up, so you could be ready to greet them at the door, or be prepared for when they come in, or even they don't have to get out of their car in the COVID world that people don't feel comfortable being in the clinic. People could wait in their car. We'll know from a geofence they're here, and we'll send them a quick message when they could go right to the chair. Using technology to do things like that, I think, will make it more convenient for the patient and make them want to engage with our clinics more than other clinics.
Totally. I like it. Great. Well, you've had experience, you mentioned, kind of in healthcare where you started off and then kind of come to dental over the last number of years. What's one thing that you think dental practices can learn from innovation that you've seen work really well, in healthcare in general? And then, based on that answer, how are you helping your clients currently kind of operationalize that? Hey, here's what I've seen coming and here's what I've seen working and here's how we're going to operationalize that. I mean, maybe you just mentioned one of those, but I would be curious, what else you've seen that they've done well, where you're like, yeah, let's bring this over.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it might even be the opposite a little bit. I find the medical world to be a very slow moving ship. There's a lot that's been done, but it's hard to get a major health system to move significantly in one direction or another.
Yeah.
I will say, and I always hate to give Epic credit for certain things, but the way they've transformed their MyChart app, where you're able to engage with the health system in a very easy, very friction-free way to meet basic medical needs, whether that is asking for refilling your prescription, confirmation of your visit ahead of time, making sure you can fill out your paperwork on your phone ahead of time, things like that. MyChart, I think, has transformed significantly even in the last few years, and applying that to the dental space, I think, is something that's important. Some of the big players are doing that now, but I don't think there's only a few apps or technology out there that is feasible for a 1 to 5 to 10 clinic DSO or dental group to purchase. But the more you can allow patients to control their own destiny easily and friction free is going to be something that will help provide a better patient experience overall.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that, I mean, I think of a lot of aspects around that too, just in terms of, hey, can I easily and quickly communicate with my provider if I have a question, right? I mean, all of that provides such a peace of mind for patients when they have a question or when they're struggling. I mean, I certainly see that with my kids, and I feel like the medical space has done that pretty well in general. And I do think we're playing catch up there in dentistry a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, I think COVID really forced a lot of that. I mean, there hasn't been a need for it necessarily until recently, but I mean, just using myself as an example, I was in Boston this week and had to talk to my doctor about something, and it was significantly easier this week than it was 2 years ago to just get on MyChart, text with him. I was able to explain what was going on. He was able to help. He prescribed something, and I was able to basically conduct a visit that would have taken a couple hours in person via chat in Boston versus Michigan, where I live, and everything was handled quickly and seamlessly. And being able to provide that type of clinical interaction, I think, is something that helps everybody out.
Yeah, totally, just reduces the friction for sure for patients. I love that, especially I think in a world where we're trying to increase access and we're trying to help everyone have as much access as possible, right? Like you want to keep the people who don't really need to be in the office out of the office, so people who do need to be in the office can actually get there. So I love that.
And you can even extrapolate that one further. There's a company based in Oklahoma that they were really on the forefront of telehealth before even COVID, and now doing this type of interactivity. And one of their premises was, how can we apply this like third world countries? And they're providing the same level of care to folks in California or New York as they are to now Africa. And you're able to democratize healthcare in a way and provide a level of healthcare, whether it be medical or dental, across the world when you have technology like that.
Yeah, I love that. Super interesting. And let's talk more about that company. Cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about you. I, have gotten to know you over the past number of months, right? Probably 6 months or so. And I love every single conversation we get to have. I always leave super enthused. And so I actually don't know the answers to these questions about you, but I'm super curious because I think that there's just a lot to you that it's just like, wow, you're a really thoughtful guy. And so one of the questions that I'm curious about is just like, what values shape your daily life and rhythms, and your family maybe daily life and rhythms? So it could be work related or not. But then could you like give us an example of like, hey, here's a value that we have, and like here's how that plays out, in how we live our life and try to live out our worldview.
Yeah, I mean, I think integrity is always the driving force of everything I do, both in work and at home, quite frankly. If you can't be honest with yourself and the people around you, then it's hard to have in my opinion, a true and fulfilling life. We with our kids, we stress that every day.
Mm.
One of my favorite things my wife has done with our 7-year-old is from the time he was able to talk, we always used to say, if you lie, your hair turns blue. We can see that. And only mamas and daddies can see it, but you can see it. And we stress, like, you can't say, you can't lie. You have to act with integrity, and you have to always be forthcoming. It's better to talk through things honestly and with integrity than to try and skate around it. And we always have those conversations when we know he's starting to get there. Oh, your hair is starting to turn blue, and it gets him right back in. And I think that he takes that with him. Funny, at school, he's like, wait, you're talking to a friend, and his friend's hair didn't turn blue when he was like, I was like, wait, is this just me? But it's something that I think stuck with him, and something that we continue to stress, and something that we play out. And I see it in my kids now as well, making sure that they're always honest and operate with the highest level of integrity.
I love that, man. It's such a, yeah, with kids especially, right? It feels like such a, like, hey, can you trust what you're gonna say? You know, and you like watch kids that don't have that, and you're like, oh, I don't really like want to hang out with them. And I think it's such a, they like gravitate towards that so early. But somehow as adults, right? Like, yeah, we want that, but there's like some level of, you know, can we all live in the gray area? And so anyways, I love your live with integrity, do what you say you're gonna do. I certainly see that in you. So thanks for providing that example. That's great. One other question about you. I think I love, well, I don't love challenges from the perspective of like, it's hard when you're going through them, right? But I'm a huge believer in the fact that if everything always comes easy to us, we never actually grow. We never really get to face, you know, the hurdles that we need to grow as people. And so I'm just curious of like, hey, what's one spot in your life where you're facing a challenge right now? And beyond that, then how do you imagine overcoming that? Like, as you see this challenge that's out there, or maybe you just have an example from the recent past, something that you've already overcome of like, hey, this is where it was challenging, and this is how it's now feeling like we're in a more open space where we've, you know, dealt with that and what we've learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID was hard for everyone in everyone's unique way, right? I mean, it's been a challenge for everybody, and the piece that we're challenged with, and this I think goes beyond just COVID, but I mean, I've been in consulting for 15 years. I was on the road Monday to Thursday every week for the 13 years before COVID happened, and all of a sudden, I still remember the time coming back from Dallas and being like, "Oh, we'll just be 2 weeks off the road, and then we'll be right back at it." 2 years later, we're still trying to navigate those waters, and it's a challenge to live my life connecting with people in person, to be effective and to build relationships, to have to do it over the phone or do it via Zoom or however you do it. And that's I while that's a work problem, I think that's a life problem too. I mean, I've lived my life connecting with people. I love connecting with people. I love meeting them face to face and having those interactions. And it's just not the same over Zoom or over a phone. And it's something that we've tried so hard at work to try and figure out different creative ways to do that, and we're still struggling.
Yeah.
Project right now, we would love to go on site. We're trying to integrate 3 companies, and it's hard. We need to see their culture and understand who they are, and you can't do that as well over Zoom. And so I think that's a challenge that we're all trying to work through in a post-COVID environment where
Yeah.
folks still don't feel like that there's a need to connect with people as much anymore in person, or have the hybrid work environment, or have even the remote work environment.
Yeah.
How do you become effective, and how do you build personal connected relationships without being there in person? I don't know if I have an answer right now. We're still struggling with it. I think we're getting better at it, and forcing ourselves to try to connect better via digital platforms. But it's something that I know that we're going to struggle with throughout the next year. And how do we find that balance between autonomy, safety, and personal connection, and be able to have that type of interaction without necessarily always being there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Is there like, you said you guys are getting better at it. Is there like anything that you found just even for yourself that's been effective in terms of like, hey, like obviously this is, you know, I think we all feel like when we go to a meeting or something, you're like, wow, it's so great to be back in person. And you like do have this very, you know, different connection with people. And we all know that this is going to be a part of our life moving forward. Is there one thing specifically that stands out to you? Like, hey, this is something that I've found that's helpful for me.
Yeah, so I know this is probably like weird and maybe reductive, but having a one-on-one phone call helps. And I know it's a weird, like it'd be weird, like, oh, let's connect by being maybe a little bit traditionally less connected. But yeah, I feel like when you get on a Zoom meeting or you get on like a conference or call, or even typically when you get on Zoom or Teams or whatever you use, there are multiple. It's easy to have multiple people there, and then people can hide or get lost in the camera picture or whatever. But having a one-on-one phone call, or having even if it's a one-on-one Teams,
Yeah.
you're forcing that connection a little bit more than a group setting where someone could either hide or it's easier for someone to not be as active when there's multiple people there than let's like a one-on-one conversation. So one of the things that I'm trying to do more, especially when we're trying to in a work setting, trying to understand people and understand their needs, is switch to a one-on-one conversation versus a group call, so that we could have that personal one-on-one dialogue versus folks getting lost in the camera settings or whatever it is.
Ooh, yeah, I really like that a lot. I think that there's a lot of value there, and I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that as well. I always remember back to my wife. She's an attorney. She used to work for a different attorney, and he was like, yeah, too much is done via email. Like, if you really want to get something done, just pick up the phone, And I think that kind of, gets to what you're saying of like, hey, there is something that happens when you can have this one-on-one connection versus even just trying to do something digitally. So yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Okay, well, let's talk about dental care making more human in the last few minutes we have left. You kind of mentioned patient experience, and something that you've been thinking about a lot and helping your clients work on, at least very much in the convenience aspect of like, hey, how do we make this as frictionless as possible, which is obviously really important. And you kind of mentioned medicine and healthcare in general being a little bit slow. Is there something though that you think they've really gotten right that we haven't adopted yet in dentistry? And when it comes to just like, hey, I don't know, I tend to think of like my healthcare provider as a little bit more of a safe connection space, or for whatever reason, than maybe I think of my dentist. And so how can we maybe take some of that and make it a little bit more human in dentistry? I'm curious to your perspective there.
Treatment planning.
Ooh,
to me, treatment planning is so fundamentally unique to dentistry than most other, especially medical fields.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in and your knee hurts and you go to orthopedist, they're going to say that here are the x-rays or MRI or CT. This is what is going on. This is your treatment, and this is how we want to move forward for your medical benefit. Yeah. There might be a surgical or non-surgical alternative, but these are the things we need to do. I feel like with the hundreds of treatment planning conversations I've heard across the country, it ends up being like almost like a used car salesman mentality sometimes, where it's not often the dentist that does it. It could be a treatment planner or someone in an office where they're going over 5 or 6 different options of things, and it's not always clear as to what is really needed versus not needed. Do I need that crown? Can I just do a filling? Why are you charging me $10,000 for this bridge? All these things that becomes very impersonal to your healthcare, and more about just like trying to like getting that feeling of upsell or selling. So the more we could get the dentist to help the patient understand the why and the need, and be as efficient as possible with the cost, I think the more human we'll make dental care. Yeah. No one likes going to the dentist to get a root canal or a bridge or whatever, or crown. How can we make that as meaningful and easy as possible for that patient?
Yeah, totally. I think that's so true. And I love just the idea of what I tell people all the time is like, we don't ever want someone, to feel like they're not choosing what they do, like what is, their healthcare, right? Their dental care. And if they have that ownership of like, I am actively choosing, no one wants to have a bridge or a root canal or whatever, like you said, but if they're like, hey, I'm actively choosing this versus somebody's just telling me I need it and I don't really understand, right? This is just a hugely different mindset in terms of, hey, like we're partners in this, instead of this is something that's being done to me or on me or even for me, so.
Right.
I love it. Okay. Last question. How are you helping your clients make dental care different and kind? Obviously, our company DifferentKind, we have that double entendre of like, hey, we want to help, bring innovation. We want to help make dental care human. We want to bring kindness to what we're doing. How are you helping your clients specifically right now? Do you have like one good example of something that you're doing? It could be different or kind or both, something that you're doing to help them implement that.
I am working with two different dental clients right now. One's in the 100 clinic range, the other's in like the 300 clinic range, but both have very similar needs of engaging with that patient in a more human way, to be different in kind. And a lot of the work we're doing is implementing not just technology, but processes to uh, better connect with patients and make their pre-service uh, experience more seamless and more patient friendly. Make it seem like you're going more to a a happy visit or a easier visit than going to the dentist, and make sure that we can get you in timely. Make sure that you see a dentist. Make sure that you know exactly what you're getting and how much it costs. Things like that. And in both these situations, they're very different, but also similar in the end goal of making it a more positive experience for the patient, so that they want to come back and consider these clinics their dental home.
I love that. And you said something that I just want to highlight, because I think it was something we miss out on dentistry, right? Like in general, dentistry has historically not been very good at like systematizing processes and how that can actually be really human and kind, in terms of you can expect the same thing from the same, if you have to go here or here or here, right? It's not going to be different. There's not going to be crazy variation. And that's really comforting sometimes, right? And whether that's really good or really bad, right? If you're, in Starbucks, right, you're going to get the same thing here as you're going to get there. And there's a system, and at least you know what to expect, right? And I do think that there is something comforting about that, especially when it comes to healthcare, that we can really learn from. So
that's right. I was literally just going to say, it's the Starbucks example. When you talk to consultants, a lot of consultants love coffee. They love good coffee, but they'll always say, well, on the road, I go to Starbucks because at least I know what I'm going to get. It's not the best coffee. It's not going to be the greatest experience, but I at least know that what I'm going to get there is something that I could expect. And I think that obviously you want to strive to be the best and not just Starbucks, but
Yep.
the expectation of knowing that your venti latte is going to be the same in New York as it is in Great Falls, Montana, there's value to that.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, like you said, we want to be the best, and we can still learn from the Starbucks way of systematizing and making things, the same across different locations. So I love that idea. And I think it's really important for us to remember. Well, fantastic. I would love for you to share, if people want to get in touch with you, if they're like, hey, this David guy sounds awesome. I think he could help me. I think he'd help our dental group, whatever it might be. How might our listeners, audience, get in touch with you if they want to, if you want to share that information?
Yeah, sure. You always email me at dnidetz@alvarezmarsal.com. That's always the best way, and most efficient way to get in touch. And happy to help anyone out there who needs it.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure we put your email in the episode links as well, just to make it easier for people as well if they need to get in touch with you. So, David, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I really appreciate it. Always fascinating to get your insight. Thank you to our listeners today. We really appreciate it as well. As a new podcast, we are trying to get the word out there. So if you can like our podcast, subscribe, share it with your friends, we always really appreciate that. We're going to continue being here, bringing you innovative guests who are really doing some cool things in dentistry, just like David is. So David, thanks again. Appreciate it. Hope you have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. You as well.